Hey everybody, it's Dan, and this is the Browns-Vikings preview edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Welcome to it. It's going to be the same preview podcast that you'd expect, even though Mary Kay is across the Atlantic Ocean. We're still giving you the exact same preview podcast. So what that means, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock join me, and we go over storylines and things we're watching in this game. Then Lance Reisland joins me and gives us his Vikings scouting report and makes his pick. I'm going to give you some prop bets I like in this game. And then Mary Kay and Ashley are going to rejoin me, and they are going to make their picks, and I'll make my pick for this game. So that's all coming up on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Let me tell you about a couple of things real quick. Our YouTube channel is Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Get subscribed there. We put these podcasts, most of our podcasts, up on video now, so if you want to watch them, you could do that. And we also go live. We are not doing it this Sunday, but most Sundays we go live at 8 p.m. when we record our post-game podcast. So head over to our YouTube channel. It's Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. There's actually a little Orange and Brown Talk tab you can click on if you want to see our pods. If you are watching this on YouTube, please go find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Get subscribed. Leave us nice reviews, 5-star reviews. Say nice things about us. We love to see that. And then I'll tell you about Football Insider super quick here. Cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. You will get a newsletter every single day. Mary Kay, Ashley, and I write that, as do some other people. So jump in on that. You can also become one of our text subscribers as well. Again, that's Football Insider, Cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. Okay, enough for me for now. I'll be back with Mary Kay and Ashley on the other side on our Orange and Brown Talk Browns-Vikings preview podcast. Welcome to our Orange and Brown Talk Browns-Vikings preview. Browns in London taking on the Vikings Sunday morning, of course, 9:30 here Eastern time, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So here we go. Browns' second London game against the Vikings. Of course, they played back there in 2017 as well. The Vikings won that football game. Mary Kay Cabot is here. Ashley's here. Of course, Mary Kay is in London. And then we're going to have Lance Reisland give us his scouting report. He's going to make his pick, and then Mary Kay and Ashley are going to join us again to make their picks for Sunday's game. So let's get to it like we always do on this preview podcast, our storylines or what we're watching, kind of the big thing that stands out to us as we get into this football game. Mary Kay, why don't you lead us off?
Well, of course, I have to go with Dillon Gabriel and how the rookie quarterback might fare against this Vikings defense. Now, we know that Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores is going to bring the house. He's going to do everything he can to rattle Dillon Gabriel. He's going to try to confuse him, and he'll blitz, he'll disguise, and all of those kinds of things. Stunt, you name it. But I do think that Dillon Gabriel does have a poise about him, and he does have some mobility. I don't think he will be quite as rattled as some rookie quarterbacks might be in their first NFL start against a Brian Flores defense. We'll have to see about that. Now, this defense does not play the run very well. They're 24th against the run, giving up, I can't remember what it is, 130 yards a game rushing or something like that. So they're not faring that well against the run. So if the Browns are smart, of course, they will really try to rely on Quinshon Judkins to help take some of that pressure off of their rookie quarterback. So that's what I'm watching. What can Dillon Gabriel do against this Vikings defense in his very first NFL start?
Yeah, I mean, that's the overarching story. If you're a Browns fan, is Dillon Gabriel. This is the guy that the Browns chose in the third round. Surprised some people when they made that pick, but this is obviously the guy they identified as, maybe a potential franchise quarterback at some point. So Ashley, this is, how is Dillon going to handle this? The last time, we've seen some ups and downs in the preseason, but that really doesn't matter that much. So now we get to see Dillon with a week of preparation. They're going to kind of cater this offense to him, and let's see how it looks.
Yeah, and look, I think it's important, that note of remembering, I guess, that the preseason doesn't necessarily matter, right? Because we're only a couple years removed where Browns fans will remember Dorian Thompson-Robinson went out there, looked great, and then really struggled when he had to play an actual game. So it is just a different world when a team is game planning for you, actually scheming things up based on what you do. But I think at the same time, it was also really promising with what we saw from him process-wise, how he operated in that 2-minute drill in the preseason finale against the Rams at the end of the first half. The fact that they've continued to work in reps with the first team for him in practice, even when he was the backup and Joe Flacco was starting. So I think from everything that we know that the Browns really love about Dylan Gabriel, his processing speed, the mobility he's going to bring to an offense that really obviously just hasn't had that at quarterback this year with Joe Flacco starting, and the fact that they've continued to give him some work, like they were expecting him to start at some point, all kind of points to, hey, this is a guy who should be really prepared for this opportunity.
Yeah, Mary Kay, I think for all the talk in the offseason about, look, the Browns have a plan. They don't want to rush these guys in, especially Dylan. They don't want to rush Dylan Gabriel in. We would talk sometimes like, when is the perfect week to put him in? I don't remember some people are looking at Miami, I think, get through Pittsburgh and put him in. It doesn't feel like this is rushed necessarily. Now, I think it's probably earlier than they wanted to put him in. They didn't want to be 1-3 and changing quarterbacks. So I certainly think this is probably earlier than they anticipated, but it still doesn't feel like they're rushing this with Dylan Gabriel. I mean, this was a change that I think just had to be made. But it is also important to remember that there are still some questions with this offense. And I think the Browns understand this, that like Dylan's not going to be a fix-all for this offense, right? They got to figure out tackle. They got to figure out their weapons, especially with Said Tillman now going on IR. So they're getting thin there. They've got to make sure this run game, which has shown progress, continues to keep going forward with Quinshon Judkins. There are certainly issues beyond Dylan Gabriel's control, but just from the standpoint of they made this change, they're going to the rookie, it doesn't feel like this was a rushed move, even though maybe it was earlier than they expected.
It doesn't really feel rushed. It was definitely earlier than they expected. They did not want to do this right now. What they wanted Dylan to have was a few more weeks of game installation, of going through the process of what you have to do to get ready to go out there and play and prepare. But because he has played so many football games and because he is so smart and such a quick processor, I think you can accelerate that process with him. He has the capability of handling that. So I think they were able to do it. I think they really felt that what was going on was unsustainable. Because once again, even though all of those turnovers were not Joe Flacco's fault, when you're talking about a passing game that doesn't have the precision that is required, you have to see if you can get it somewhere else. Maybe they can't. Maybe they are delusional. They, at one point, really thought that Dorian Thompson-Robinson was going to be an amazing quarterback for them and that they were completely onto something with him. And maybe Dorian will still turn into something, but that hasn't happened yet. So let's see if they may have caught lightning in a bottle with Dylan Gabriel. Did they do it? Or did everybody else in the league that decided that Dylan Gabriel wasn't worth a first-round pick or a second-round pick, were those teams right? Or were the Browns right here? Because they targeted him early on, and they knew that Dylan was their man, so much so that they passed on Shedeur 6 times. They wanted nothing to do with Shedeur. They didn't look at Jackson Dart, who is now starting for the Giants. They let everybody else go that was in this draft, and they laser focused on Dylan Gabriel. And so now it's time to see how their eyes are for these young quarterbacks. And I think that's important too. Everyone needs to see, what are they looking at? What are they thinking? And do they maybe perhaps know some things that other people might not know or see? So did they find it? Did they find something here? Or did they not? And they needed to find out, because their defense was getting frustrated. Their offensive players were getting frustrated, and it could not go on like that any longer.
I think the whole idea of picking Dylan, it's so interesting to me, because this is sort of like, yes, they drafted Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but obviously they had Deshaun Watson in the fold already, and the hope was still that Deshaun Watson would, be that guy for them, be that long-term starter, and Dorian would maybe be a backup for a little while, then maybe turns into an asset, something like that, or I don't know, maybe takes over for Deshaun one day. Who knows? But this is really, and even the Deshaun trade was just sort of pouncing on an opportunity. It was still sort of like, we need to bring this guy in and figure out how he fits and what we want to do offensively, all of that stuff. It never worked out for various reasons. And now Dylan Gabriel kind of represents this, like, this was their handpicked guy. Now, he was a third round pick. It's not like they took him in the first round. So if it doesn't work out, maybe they can kind of hide behind that a little bit. But this was their handpicked choice at quarterback. And this is a guy that obviously Andrew and Kevin and, as they remade this offense, they looked at Dylan Gabriel and said, this is the guy that can do what we want to do. And I think that's what's so interesting about this is this feels like the first guy. I mean, we shouldn't give them a pass on Deshaun Watson, but this is the first guy they've drafted where it feels like they really handpicked him. And so now let's see what happens here starting on Sunday with Dylan Gabriel. Ashley, what's your storyline? What are you watching in this one?
Yeah, my storyline is going to be actually something we were talking about right before we started recording, and it's going to be, can the Browns defense take advantage of a very injured, mixed up Vikings O-line right now? Because the Vikings have kind of been in a similar spot to the Browns in terms of offensive line injuries. They have not had their starting five play together in a game yet, according to their own team website that I'm on right now. So you look at the injuries recently. Obviously, we know Christian Darrisaw, the left tackle, is back. They were slow to bring him back after the knee injury he suffered last year. And then their center, Ryan Kelly, has had to miss time twice due to concussions. And then the other big injury, right tackle Brian O'Neill, is the one who sprained his MCL in Dublin last week in their game against the Steelers. So if I'm the Browns D-line, knowing all this, and we've seen the Vikings writers reporting like multiple guys taking snaps at center, right? Like, it seems like a lot is very much in flux for them, which to me is prime time for a Jim Schwartz defensive line. And look, remembering back last year to the joint practices against the Vikings, Christian Darrisaw really struggling against Myles Garrett. Like, I vividly remember that matchup, remember seeing his quotes talking about Myles. That happens with a lot of guys. So kind of difficult when they're going to have all these pieces. Like, I'm especially curious, like, how much are they going to be able to actually help on Myles Garrett? And if they are, who else is that going to be freeing up? Because if you have multiple new guys in there, it's going to, I think, make some of that scheming a little bit more difficult. And I do think that could end up being a key to the game, because this defense, I think, obviously, they always need to play well to give this team a chance right now. But I think potentially that could be the difference maker for them, really being disruptive, really getting after Carson Wentz, and possibly creating some takeaways, I think would be most important.
Yeah, we always talk about this is, football is a game of matchups. And, it's something I'm sure we'll get into in our picks as well when we get to the end of this pod. But, Mary Kay, when you look at the matchup game and you look at what the Browns' strength is, right, it starts with that pass rush. And then you look at the other side, and the Vikings are just, this is a team that just desperately needs to get to that bye week next week. And then lucky them, they get to come out in week 7 and play the Eagles, the Chargers, the Lions. So it doesn't get any easier for this football team, but they got to get to that bye week next week, because they are just holding this thing together with a thread. And that's good news for the Browns, because the strength of this team, the thing you point to that you say, this is the unit that is among the best in the league, is that pass rush. And if I were going against this defense, that's the last thing I would want, is to have some patchwork offensive line, because obviously Myles Garrett's a pain to deal with, but with the way things are going this year, it's that whole front that has been a pain to deal with.
Absolutely 100%. And in this game of matchups, the Browns have a decided edge there in the trenches. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out, because Myles, we know he's coming off of an ankle injury suffered in this last game against Detroit, but he would have practiced today if they had a full practice. They only had a walkthrough, so he was listed as limited, but he's trending in the right direction. We know that Myles plays hurt. We know that he takes care of his body very well throughout the week, and he gets himself to Sunday. So he's going to be playing. Even if Myles isn't playing or is just playing part-time, I still think that these guys, the Browns, have the decided edge in terms of defensive line versus banged up offensive line for the Minnesota Vikings. And that's going to make for a long afternoon for Carson Wentz, who is starting this game in place of J.J. McCarthy. So we know what the Browns' game plan is going to be in that regard. And again, I think they have the decided edge, and I believe it will play out that way on the field.
Okay, I'm going to look at another matchup that I think is really interesting, and that's whose weapons are going to be better in this football game. Obviously, you look at the Vikings, it starts with Justin Jefferson. They got Jordan Addison back from suspension last week. I think that's a really interesting, and for the Browns, by the way, on that other side, Greg Newsome pops up with a hamstring injury today. We'll know more tomorrow when you guys go out to practice to see if he's out there, to see what the deal is with that. Like you said, Mary Kay, was a walkthrough. So, we just don't know. It was an estimated injury report. Maybe it's nothing, but that's worth keeping an eye on, because you don't want to be down one of your starting corners. Obviously, the Vikings don't have their starting running back in Aaron Jones. So I guess, how do those outside guys for the Vikings play? And then also for the Browns, can Jerry Jeudy get it together? Can they figure something out with Isaiah Bond, who's probably going to be your number 2 receiver in this football game? Can Quinshon Judkins, who's off to a great start, can he continue that and play really well? Or is Brian Flores going to maybe sell out a little bit and try and stop that run game early, and try to make the Browns and Dylan Gabriel beat them through the air? So I'm really curious, Ashley, what all of these weapons are going to do, because the Vikings obviously have 2 really great players on the outside at receiver. The Browns are kind of trying to figure that stuff out, but it seems like their running game is really good. So sort of in this battle of weapons, with a Carson Wentz on one side, as shaky a quarterback as you get, and Dylan Gabriel making his first start, which quarterback is going to be helped out more by his weapons?
Yeah, and look, I think the Browns pass catching core has kind of been through the ringer a little bit already. I mean, obviously this week you lose Seth Tillman, you lose DeAndre Cartier, who's your primary returner, but opens up another spot in that receiver room too. And then Jerry Jeudy has obviously been struggling these opening games of the season. I mean, we talked about just having no real chemistry with Flacco. He doesn't have any touchdowns yet. He's tied for second in the league, I believe, right now with 4 drops. So things can't get much worse. And I will say, at least for the Browns, like Quinshon Judkins seems to be taking a step every week. I really do believe every time we've seen him out there, he looks better and like he's being more effective, and he is creating some of the only explosive plays this offense has seen. So it is going to be, I think, a question of on which side, like who is going to step up, and can the Browns have somebody step up who, outside of Judkins, necessarily hasn't in, I think, the way they would have hoped in terms of the pass catching, especially. So that part of it is interesting too, when you have a coordinator who is as good as Brian Flores, particularly at disguising things. That is the number one thing we've heard from players this week in terms of what you have to watch out for.
Yeah, the thing about it is, in a game that I think is going to be a low-scoring game, like Justin Jefferson makes one big play down the field and scores a touchdown, or Jordan Addison, like that can be a game-changing sort of play if there aren't a lot of points on the board. So even if the Browns outplay the Vikings, if Minnesota gets 1 or 2 big plays out of their weapons and Jerry Jeudy has a drop, or maybe Isaiah Bond doesn't have I think he had a really good game in Detroit. Does he build on that? Are they still trying to figure some things out with him? The Browns just don't have that ability on the outside right now that the Vikings do. Or maybe Quinshon Judkins breaks a big run, right? Like that could be a difference maker in a game where there aren't going to be a lot of points. It's just, Mary Kay, these teams are going to rely on weapons in different ways. The Browns, maybe it's Judkins and Harold Fannin and Njoku, and the Vikings, it's those big outside guys. Which skill players can make the big plays in a game where there might not be a lot of points?
Well, fortunately for the Browns, when we talk about the matchups, they usually do fairly well against the star receivers. They usually do okay. Now, they have to hope that Greg Newsome is going to be healthy with that hamstring, but Denzel usually does a pretty nice job on the team's opposing best receiver. So we'll have to see how that's going to go, because once they start to get into their depth, it can get a little dicey there. But if you get enough pressure on Carson Wentz, and it looks to me like there will be plenty of opportunities to do that, then you're going to make it hard for him to get that ball as much as he wants to Justin Jefferson. So that has to be the goal. They've really got to get to Carson, and they've got to make him rush his throws and get him off of his mark and get him kind of rattled. Similar to what Brian Flores is going to be trying to do to young Dillon Gabriel, but I think that the Browns have the edge in terms of their defensive line. And I think for the most part, the Browns' offensive line should hold up okay, except for there are some issues. We really don't know yet if Jack Conklin is going to play and if Cam Robinson is going to start this game. So there are question marks there. I think each team has about the same amount of issues heading into this game, which in my mind is about all you can ask for the Cleveland Browns right now compared to some of the other teams that they have had to face.
Yeah, I texted Lance earlier this week when I watched that Vikings game on Monday, and I just sent him the meme with the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other, because it was like these are two teams they've got injuries at key spots. The Browns are making a quarterback change. The Vikings don't have their starting quarterback. I mean, there's just a lot going on both of these teams. Like I said, they're both, the Vikings especially, are trying to hold this thing together to get to that bye week, and the Browns are just trying to figure some things out on the offensive line and all of that. So it's going to be a weird game. People are going to wake up on Sunday morning and they are going to watch a weird football game, I think. We're going to talk more about that. Lance is going to give us his scouting report on the Vikings here in the next segment, and then Mary Kay and Ashley are going to rejoin me, and we are going to make our weird picks for this weird game. I got a weird score for this one, just so you guys know. I got a weird score set aside for this Browns-Vikings game. Quick break, Lance on the other side. Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. I almost said Guardians Tigers. All right, here we go. Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Browns Vikings preview edition, London. Browns and Vikings. They played there in 2017. They will play there again now. And as he does every week, Lance Reisland joins me for his scouting report. So Lance, let's get into this football game, and let's start with the defense today. The defense that Dillon Gabriel is going to face, that Brian Flores defense. Tell me what they do really well.
Well, he's very, very multiple in what he does. In fact, as I watched the game from last week against the Steelers and went back and watched, all their games this year, he almost sometimes is too smart for himself, if that makes any sense, right? Some guys are really, really intelligent. And Brian Flores is a brilliant defensive coordinator. He's got a brilliant mind. So they're going to be very multiple. They're going to be very exotic in their look, especially on the second and third down. But for me, I actually think it plays into the Browns' hands. And people are like, you're nuts. Well, the Browns are starting a rookie quarterback, and they want to be basic anyway. And they know that with the lack of skill players. They want to run the ball. So I think the Browns are going to have to do some gap schemes, because gap schemes are a little bit easier against various fronts. I think they're going to have to work the tight ends a little bit, which works good for Gabriel, throwing out the run, changing his launch points. So there's a lot of things that he does really well that should help the Browns a little bit. But, Grenard's a really good rusher. The Redmond guy inside is super active. They got this guy I've never heard of, Ivan Pace, who's their one of their really good backers. Their corners are solid. This is a very, very solid defense at all levels. But their scheme, I think, is what makes everybody better. Brian Flores, I've always been a fan of what he does. They're all over the place. If I had to scout them, like if I was playing them, you talk about exhausted. These guys are exhausted preparing for this defense, because they're going to see more than they've seen all year with variations of the fronts and coverages and blitzes.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like Flores is one of those defensive coordinators that he's going to make you think he's really good at making you think you're seeing one thing, and then when the play actually starts, that's not what you're seeing. And that's a big ask for a rookie quarterback. For even a guy as seasoned and as smart as Dillon Gabriel, this is like a whole nother level for him, right?
Well, I think that's you're absolutely right. You're spot on. And he does a really good job of disguising things. So I think when you go into that as an offensive coordinator, and I got to, let's use it as a high school level. I'm starting a sophomore. Well, you want to get into some easy concepts that are kind of the same regardless of the coverage, regardless of what you see. So I expect to see some half-field reads where he's going to look to one side and see what that side's doing, because Flores will play multiple coverages on different sides versus different formations, etc. So I expect to see the levels concept. I expect him to run wide zone and then run the levels concept off it with Njoku or Fannin in the flat, Njoku or Fannin at the second level, and then Jerry Jeudy over the top. I expect to see a lot of that out of different formations, different rules. But the bottom line is, on a levels concept, it's always the same read, regardless of coverage. So I think, and then they're going to throw simple routes. Like last week, the big hit to that was a slant arrow. Really easy concept, get rid of the ball fast, even with Aaron Rodgers, who struggled with some of their blitz packages. So I think he's really, really good at disguising stuff. And I think that really helps this Browns offense because that's what they want to do anyway.
So what I guess when you look at this Vikings defense, at least statistically against the run, that's an area where they struggle. So considering how well Quinshon Judkins has played, considering how it seems like the Browns have sort of figured some things out in that run game over the last few weeks, do you think they can run the ball on this Vikings defense?
Well, I actually did a podcast this week, and I was trying to figure out why are they struggling so much against the run, and where they struggle is where the Browns can be really good at. They struggle in that CD gap, and for those who don't really understand what that is, that's between the tackle and tight end, and then outside the tackle, right? And that would be like the 6-7 hole, right? So not directly at the center, but more at the tight end. If you think about where Njoku lines up, they're really weak there. And the reason why is because of all those exotic fronts. So what the Steelers would do last week is they put 3 linemen on one side, and then the Vikings wouldn't line up right, and they'd have a really soft edge. So one of their scoring drives, they ran counter. They just ran a simple toss. They ran a duo where the back bounced it to the C gap. So that C gap where the Browns have, will run power, can run counter, can run their duo, can run the stuff that they've been getting pretty good at, that's where they're weakest. They're pretty solid inside. Once again, Grenard's a great pass rusher, but he really doesn't want to set the edge too much. He wants to rush the passers. Yes, if where they're gonna be beat is where the Browns are gonna run, and I think it works out for those tackles because I think the Browns tackles, as bad as they've played in pass protection, they have not been terrible in their run schemes. They just got to work it a little bit more, but they've been okay in those guys are tough. They're just not real skilled in their pass sets yet.
If you were advising Brian Flores going against Dylan Gabriel, and you know Dylan Gabriel as well as anybody that we're going to have on this podcast, he was a guy that you studied a lot, a guy that you obviously loved coming out of college. What would you advise him about Dylan Gabriel? Like, how would you attack him in his first start?
Well, the first thing is I press everybody. I tell all my corners we're going to press because I think I can cover the Browns receivers. So I'm going to press and take away his first option with inside 10 yards. That was kind of my dad's rule that I stuck with, right? If a guy's young, if a guy likes to be in rhythm, right? Dylan Gabriel's a rhythm passer. Phenomenal footwork, phenomenal transfers his weight, all the fundamentals that I talk about. He's outstanding. Obviously, you know how I feel about Dylan Gabriel, especially when it comes to his fundamentals. So first thing I would do is I got to make sure that I don't give him any easy ones. I'm pressing everybody. I'm making him throw the ball from 10 plus all the time, or at least especially early downs. I'm going to really try to make him throw the ball, extend the ball, and then I'm going to get him off his spot. And the best way you get a quarterback off his spot is A and B gap pressure. So I would bring lots of double mug blitzes. I would do things. Ivan Pace is undersized, but he's a really good blitzer. So I'm going to get him off his spot. So I'm going to press coverage. I'm going to get him off his spot. And I'm not going to play all one coverage. I'm going to show a lot of press, but I'm going to play a lot of different things just to get him thinking a ton. So obviously, if it's all zone, if it's all man, a quarterback can kind of adjust. I would mix it up against a young guy. And this is not just for Dylan Gabriel. This is for all young guys at all levels. This is what defensive coordinators are going to do. Take away easy throws. Get them off their spot. Get them out of rhythm. Shut the run down. Things like that. That's what they're going to do. Flores is going to make him extend the ball down the field. And I think their best option, in my opinion, is Njoku and Fannin. Because it's inside the hashes, and that's where he's pretty good. He can really shoot those seam routes really well.
Okay, let's flip it to the other side. And this is an area where it's the Browns all of a sudden have a decided advantage because we know that front four. We know how good they've been. And this Vikings offensive line, their right tackle is hurt. Their center's in the concussion protocol. They've got 3-4 guys snapping the football at practice right now trying to figure that out. Christian Darrisaw is back, so that helps a little bit. But this is a banged up offensive line. So I guess from your perspective as a coach, when you're dealing with this front, with an offensive line, with a bunch of moving parts, a bunch of different, you've got to figure out ways to protect Carson Wentz of all people. Is that even nothing is impossible in the NFL. But is that even possible? Like, is this just a matchup that the Browns absolutely have to dominate because they're just going to have such a big edge?
Well, you're right, especially in the NFL, right? There's never say never, right? I remember I was talking before the Green Bay Packers game. We didn't think they'd play like that. I know I didn't pick them, and I didn't have it close because the Packers had been so good then. This offensive line, as bad as the Browns' tackles have played because of injuries, this offensive line has played terribly, both in the run and in the pass. Derishaw is a turnstile out there, left tackle. I know he's hurt. They've had a lot of Brendel is really not good in pass protection. This is a matchup. If I'm that defensive line and I'm Jacques in that meeting room, I'm saying if we don't turn the ball over, if our offense can protect the ball, we win this game. We can win this game, guys, because I think they can create short fields. I think they can create pressure on Wentz. Wentz is a guy, keep him in the pocket, get him out of the pocket. He's a pretty tough guy. He's a lot tougher than people give him credit for, but he'll make mistakes. Now, what I think the Browns can do that the Steelers could not do, even though the Steelers got great pressure with those defensive ends, the Browns can create pressure with just 4. And when I watched the film, 6 sacks, lots and lots of pressure. They ran some stunts, the odd front, 5-man front. The Browns can create pressure with just 4. Now, I think they bring 5 and 6 because they haven't picked those up either. But remember, if you only bring 4, now you're covering with 7. And Carson will throw the ball to you. He will absolutely throw the ball. He had a couple really poor throws, had a couple really good throws last week. But he's a guy under pressure when the clock is sped up, he struggles. And Derishaw versus Myles Garrett is a mismatch. But I think the mismatch is inside with Malik Collins with those guards in the center. Him and Graham should absolutely dominate. This is the biggest mismatch we've had so far. Who the Browns are playing, the other side of the football. This is the biggest. This might be one of the biggest mismatches on paper going into a game in the NFL this week. Browns got to win and win big up front.
Now, obviously, with the Vikings, the weapons on the outside is something you have to worry yourself with. Justin Jefferson, one of the, some people think he's the best receiver in football. If he's not their number 1, he's their number 2 or he's right there in that discussion. Jordan Addison is back off that suspension, so he's out there. So it'll be Denzel Ward, possibly Greg Newsome. He popped up on the injury report with a hamstring. Again, it's an estimated injury report, so we'll have a better idea of what's going on there on Friday. But this is kind of one of those get your popcorn ready matchups, right, Lance? Because it is these Browns corners, these outside corners that love these matchups, going against 2 of the better receivers, one of the best receivers in football, and Jordan Addison, who's pretty good too.
And this is going to be interesting because this is where the Browns defensive line really helps the secondary this week. So if they can create pressure and win first down, now they can take away those easy throws. Make Carson Wentz beat you over the top. And as good as those guys are, I think they're outstanding run after catch. He had 10 catches last week, Jefferson, and they were force feeding him, which me and you, sometimes we don't agree on everything, but you and I are big on the best guys got to touch the football. And I really appreciate what they've done over there in Minnesota with Aaron Jones being out. They're force feeding Jefferson, and I think that's outstanding. They got Addison, who's tough. Hawkinson's a good tight end. Thielen's a good third down receiver. So they got some good guys outside. They don't run it very well. But if they can, I've always been big on let's take him away, let's put Ward on him. But that's not really how Schwartz operates. He likes to have confidence in his guys, and he shows confidence to those guys. But I've always been don't let Jefferson beat you. So either there's 2 ways to do it, and there's a lot of different. You can play some more zone like I'd like to do, but he likes to play man. And one of our things my dad played a very similar defense, and I don't care what level of football it is. It's the same things. You got to take plays away. You got to so a lot of teams will go with put Ward on Newsome, put Ward on Addison, put Newsome on Thielen, and then double Jefferson with, Miles Harden and the safety and make the other guys play. There's some different ways you can do it. Schwartz does a great job figuring out ways to do that. But for me, those matchups are nullified by this defensive line this week. They have to be smart. They have to take away easy throws. But this is a mismatch up front, and I don't think he's going to have time. There's times last week where the Steelers just collapse the pocket. And Steelers are good on defense, but they're not. They collapse the pocket with 5 and 6. The Browns are going to collapse that pocket with 4. So, it would be interesting. I would take away easy throws. I would tell our corners, play it like 5 yards. Play man at like 5 yards. Don't give him a hitch. Don't give him a slant. And give yourself a chance against a deep ball. Because this defensive line, remember, if they anything over 10 yards, he's going to hold it over 2.8. And I don't think that offensive line can hold up. I've been proven wrong before, and I'll be proven wrong again. But until I see it, that offensive line is going to struggle big time for the Vikings this week.
Okay, so I think I know where this is going, but go ahead and make your pick here for us, Lance.
Yeah, I think the Browns win this game. I still think the offense is going to be a work in progress, but I think they run the ball and seeing the gap. I think you're going to see more counter, more power, more gap schemes against this Flores. If you think about what a gap scheme is without getting into it with football jargon, it's just really easy for an offensive lineman to block. It's hard to block when the other team's good, but in terms of where you're going, exactly where you're going, as where zone is a little bit harder at times. So I think they run the ball and see the gap. I think Gabriel makes enough plays. I think he protects the football. I think that the defense gets a score. I think they create a couple short fields. I got the Browns 21-10, and I think the Vikings score late. I don't think the Vikings move the ball very well at all this week.
Okay, there you go. Lance Reisland with his scouting report on the Vikings and his pick for this game. We're going to take a break, and on the other side, Mary Kay and Ashley are going to rejoin me, and they will make our picks. I'll make my pick too for Sunday's game. Lance, appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Hey, Dan, again, real quick, before we bring Mary Kay and Ashley on to make our picks, let's go over some of the prop bets that I like in this game, or at least some that stood out to me, and maybe why I like them real quick. So the first one I like, this one is actually on FanDuel. It's the Browns defense, anytime touchdown, plus 1,100. Carson Wentz fumbles the ball a ton. The Browns will be able to create pressure. It feels like, just a little bit on this, $1, you can win $11 if you put $1 on it, whatever you do it responsibly. Browns defense, anytime touchdown, plus 1,100 on FanDuel. Now these odds are as of Thursday, so some of them might be different when you're listening to this or when you actually go look these up. Over on DraftKings, you're going to hear this in our picks. The under is 30. The total is 36.5. I still like the under, even though that's low. I don't think I would actually bet that, though. I just hate going under on low totals because crazy things happen. The Browns are plus 4.5 in this game as of this recording. But if you like the Browns to win this, they're plus 180 on the money line. So that's what I'm thinking as far as the game is concerned. I don't know if I would actually put anything on those. Here's one that would be a real bummer to bet, but it's interesting. You'd have to root a little bit against the Browns. Dylan Gabriel under half a touchdown. So basically betting on Dylan Gabriel to not throw a touchdown. I think he can play well in this game and still not throw a touchdown. I think this is going to be a low scoring game. Let's say he throws the ball down to the 5-yard line. They run it in from there. That's how you get no touchdowns from Dylan Gabriel and you still win this game. That's plus 169. That's on DraftKings. The rest of these are all on DraftKings. So you don't want to root for that as a Browns fan. So if there's one you want to root for, this one I liked. This one I really like, actually. Carson Wentz under 18.5 completions is plus 101. Now, he had 30 against Pittsburgh last week. So wait, what am I doing here? Under 18.5? Are you kidding me? But Jared Goff, 16 completions. Jordan Love, 18 completions. Lamar Jackson, 19 completions. Joe Burrow, 14 completions. There are not a lot of completions happening against this Browns defense. Maybe Carson Wentz under 18.5. Now, if Minnesota's throwing a lot, obviously that makes it more complicated. But if you're looking for one of these quarterbacks and you don't want to root for Dylan Gabriel to not throw a touchdown, which I don't think you do, this Carson Wentz under 18.5 completions interesting. On DraftKings, you can kind of move some of these props a little bit. So Isaiah Bond, you can actually move him up to 40 plus receiving yards and get that at plus 148. That's interesting. If you're feeling real dangerous, you can move him up to 50 plus and get plus 318. I'd stick with 40. I think he's your number 2 receiver. And this is one that is starting to adjust. It's Quinshon Judkins carries. So it was like 12 a few weeks ago. We hit that one. It was 15.5 last week. That would have hit the over. Quinshon Judkins over 18.5 carries is plus 103. Starting quarterback is a rookie. Quinshon had, I think it was 21 carries last week. I could see this one, especially if the Browns score early and have a lead. I could see this one potentially hitting as well. So those are some of the prop bets that I like. Hand up. I don't know if I'm going to bet any of them. I don't know which ones I am going to bet. Those are just the ones that stood out to me. Whatever you do it responsibly. Hey, let's get to our actual game picks for Sunday. We're going to take a break, and then Mary Kay and Ashley are going to rejoin me. All right, back on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Thanks to Lance for that scouting report, and it is time now for us to make our picks. The Browns in London, taking on the Vikings, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Mary Kay, it's an outdoor press box, right? Like you guys are going to be sitting, last week we were in an open press box in Detroit, but obviously there was a roof overhead. But you guys have to sit outside in this press box, don't you?
We do. And that's really not my favorite thing to do. shall we say, especially if it's going to be raining. So I don't really know how that's going to work if it's raining. I will bring an umbrella and I have a raincoat. But if it's cold and rainy, which it seems like it's going to be, sitting outside for this football game is just really not what I have in mind for a football game in London. But I mean, it is what it is. You just have to deal with it. I hope that it still is great fun for all the Browns fans that have come over here to go to this game. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. Outdoor press box.
It'll make for an interesting post-game podcast. We'll put it that way. Okay, so let's make our picks. I guess I'll start us off. I promised a weird score, so I'll start us off. I've been leaning all week towards picking the Browns. I'm a little nervous the way I was in week 1. Like, I felt like there were just too many people who were like, yeah, the Browns are going to win this game. But I do just think the Browns are going to win this game. And I think it's because I don't think it's for any other reason than I think that defensive line is going to dominate. I just don't see how Minnesota is going to be able to slow down that pass rush with Myles Garrett, even if he's playing on a bad ankle. Mason Graham, who's starting to come on as a pass rusher. Malik Collins has been really good. On the other side, Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire are creating pressure. They just come in waves. And I just think that matchup alone is enough to swing this in the Browns' favor. I don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game because I think Minnesota and Brian Flores are going to, mess things up for Dillon Gabriel a little bit. I think he'll be fine. I don't think we're going to come away from this feeling like he's a disaster or anything. I think it'll just look like a rookie starting his first game against a great defensive coordinator. And on the other side, it's going to look like Carson Wentz playing against a great defense and a great defensive coordinator. So I think the Browns are going to win this game. I'm going to say 12-11. Cleveland Browns beat the Minnesota Vikings. There's my pick for this one. What was that, Mary Kay?
How are you getting to 12?
I didn't know I was going to have to do the math here. Okay. How am I getting
the
to
math?
All right. How am I getting to 12? Let's say, oh man, how am I going to get to 12? Let me think about it.
What about 2 field goals?
2 field goals. That would give me 6.
Score a touchdown
and a missed extra point.
They go for 2 points because analytically, whatever the score. And I get to 11. I don't know. You're gonna have to figure that one out.
Well,
yourself.
11 is just score a touchdown, get the 2, and then kick a field goal. Something like that.
So, or you can do a touchdown,
safety,
a field goal, and a safety to get to 12.
Yeah.
Or wasn't there a 2-point conversion returned by in that Sunday night game last week for 2 points, something weird like that? So yeah,
I don't even remember that. Wow.
Yeah, there we go. 12-11. I stand by it, even though you guys made me do the work on a napkin here to figure out how they get there.
What is the spread for this game, Dan? Do you know?
I looked it up earlier. It's 4.5. Vikings are favored by 4.5.
4.5. Okay.
Yeah, so
very good. Ashley, want to go?
Yeah.
Sure. I'll go. I have been hesitant all week to pick the Browns, mainly because of what happened in Detroit, and mainly because I picked them last week to pull off an upset. I talked myself into it. Dan helped me talk myself into it, and I was embarrassed. I don't like feeling embarrassed, but also I know rationally I could be getting sucked into the sunk cost fallacy at this point and doubling down and saying, well, I can't pick them because they embarrassed me last week. But that has nothing to really do with it. And I look at last week and I think, you know what? That defense really did only give up 10 points. And that defense really did hold them to about 109 rushing yards when they had been running teams down up until that point. So I feel like I have to still stick with my initial gut and pick the Browns in a weird game for, quite honestly, the reason Dan said. This Vikings offense is just beat up enough, and the line is being held together by chewing gum and duct tape, and I just think it's a bad matchup for them this week to have to face the Browns pass rush. So I'm going to go with the weird score too, because why not? Still not going to pick the Browns to score 20 points. I'm going to go Browns 19, Vikings, let's say 15.
Okay. I'm not going to make you tell us. I'm just going to be along for
the
guys, beautiful journey to 19 points.
To 19. Don't make me do math up to 19. I could my top out at like 12, Dan. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, my other option for 12 would just be, did we mention this? It could just be four field goals, right? I mean, they're in London. They love field goals over there, so maybe that's the math. Hey, a win's a win. It doesn't matter how you get there. All right, Mary Kay, here you go.
Wait, before I go, how did you talk Ashley into picking the Browns to beat the Lions?
I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm not sure.
Remember, it was in your lead up, and I was like, Dan, I think you made me change my pick in the real time, and you didn't pick.
I didn't pick the Lions,
obviously.
I didn't pick the Browns. Yeah, I picked the Lions.
But there was something about in your lead up in terms of why your pick could be wrong, and the way you were talking about the Browns, I kind of started nodding along and being like, I see the vision. And I said that on the podcast last week. I'm like, Dan, I think you've talked me into this inadvertently the other way. So
You know what this is?
I was already having thoughts, and you helped confirm my bias.
This is chestnut checkers in our season long keeping records with who gets games right and wrong.
Are we even keeping records? I don't even know my record. I don't want to know.
You guys are doing all right. You guys are doing fine. You're doing fine. I promise. Okay, Mary Kay, go ahead.
Well, it's going to be a clean sweep for the .comers, which of course makes me think that now we're all going to be wrong. But I'm picking the Browns to win this game too, largely for the same reasons that you guys are, but also because I do kind of think that Dillon Gabriel is going to provide this offense with a little bit of a spark, and this team with a little bit of a spark, with some energy, with some vitality, with some youth. And I do think that it's going to have an impact, and it's going to penetrate the whole entire football team. So I am picking the Browns to win this game. And I also don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. And I have the Browns winning 20-17.
That's a much easier score to get to than what we came up with. All right, there we go.
The old conventional 20-17.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with convention. I wonder if 12-11 would be a scoregami. I'd have to look that up. Okay, that will do it for our preview edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. If you're not subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, get subscribed there. Search for Orange and Brown Talk. Leave us 5-star reviews. Say nice things about us. We like that. Our YouTube channel is Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. We are not, because of the timing, we are not going to go live with our post-game pod this week, but most games we do go live at 8 o'clock on Sunday night with our post-game podcast. So get subscribed to our YouTube channel, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. And of course, if you're not a Football Insider subscriber, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page to get involved with that. For Lance, for Mary Kay, for Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.